Welcome to your Brightline Explained update.
Private companies are bidding to build and to operate the high-speed rail.
The addition of integrated real estate development aligns two economic engines that directly support one another that has more than one way to pay the bills.
We cannot afford to let this opportunity pass us by.
Please exit through the rear door.
As always, thanks to my patrons. Your donations make this content possible. It's been a year and a half. A lot of stuff has happened since we last talked about Brightline, so I think it's time for an update. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Fortress Investment Group would be acquired by SoftBank Group for $3.3 billion. SoftBank Group sold the Fortress Investment Group to Mubadala Capital, an investment company owned by the government of Abu Dhabi. So technically, all the way up the food chain, Brightline is owned by the UAE. Tri-Rail trains were supposed to begin service into Miami Central in 2017, but was postponed due to problems with signaling and clearance issues on Tri-Rail's platforms in the station. These have since been fixed. Tri-Rail service to Miami Central began service on January 13, 2024. The initial service consists of a shuttle service between Metro Rail Transfer Station and Miami Central, but due to Brightline's focus on longer distance passengers between Miami and Orlando, and shifting away from commuters between Miami and West Palm Beach, Tri-Rail has added a daily express train from Miami Central to West Palm Beach Station. So while commuters are losing on a direct connection to downtown West Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale, they are getting a cheaper service than Brightline and a faster service than the current Tri-Rail operations. Now, it's currently uncertain what's going to happen to this service. Will it be expanded? Will it be canceled altogether? The answer to this was made more complicated by a federal grant given to Brightline, something we'll go into later in the video. The Aventura station is located right across from the Aventura Mall. Despite how close the station is to the mall, US Route 1 creates a nice concrete border between the station and the mall. This means that unfortunately the station isn't that accessible. This means that a pedestrian bridge was needed to cross over the Dixie Highway and the two tracks of the Florida East Coast Railroad right-of-way. The initial design of the station was to have the pedestrian bridge continue to cross over US Route 1. This would have allowed riders to walk straight to the Aventura Mall. Due to lack of funding and the station going over budget, the pedestrian bridge was cut. Fortunately, Brightline offers a complimentary shuttle to the mall for passengers. Unfortunately, the shuttle sucks. There have been many complaints from passengers that the shuttle just doesn't show up, passengers being stranded and having to take Ubers, and passengers just straight up missing their train. I'm sure the mall shuttle has been a logistical nightmare for Brightline themselves. I mean, you get what you paid for. Should have built the pedestrian bridge from the beginning. Fortunately, Brightline isn't giving up on that pedestrian bridge, and the pedestrian bridge is now in the design phase. This bridge is pretty important because not only does it connect it to the mall, but it also connects the station to Aventura's main bus stop. Unfortunately, the east side of the pedestrian bridge, which crosses over Biscayne Boulevard, has been delayed by a year. It was supposed to open Thanksgiving 2024, but now it's going to open Thanksgiving 2025. So why would it take Brightline a whole 2 years just to build a simple bridge? Well, the reality is much more complicated. See, when you're dealing with a lot of different groups of people and corporations and governments, it tends to be difficult to keep infrastructure projects under control. Now, this can go all the way from the massive scale of California High-Speed Rail to building a simple pedestrian bridge over a boulevard. So what happened was the owner of the mall, Turnberry, planned to build an office building on the vacant land on the other side of the boulevard. The pedestrian bridge would have continued from the station over the boulevard and connected to the office building. Unfortunately, the owners of the mall canceled the plans for the office building, which meant that Brightline had to pick up the pieces and basically start from scratch. Anyways, the bridge is being funded by $4 million given from the county to the city of Aventura, which means that Brightline isn't really losing a lot of money from the project being delayed necessarily, but it is losing potential money the longer the station isn't connected to the mall. And some of you might be saying, well, the station is connected to the mall because it has the free shuttle. Well, actually, Brightline discontinued that shuttle. If you go to the shuttle's website, it says that the location is straight up closed. So when I was saying that the shuttle was a logistical nightmare for Brightline, it turns out that it really was, to the point where Brightline got rid of the shuttle altogether. Aventura also has low-level platforms. This is for a future commuter rail service that starts at Miami Central and terminates at Aventura. This Miami-Dade commuter rail project is called the Northeast Corridor.
He copied my whole fucking flow! Word for word! Bar for bar!
This project is now in the engineering phase, with the potential operators slated to be chosen soon. These potential operators of the new commuter railroad route include Tri-Rail, the Miami-Dade County Transit Authority, and Brightline. Of course, there are probably other potential bidders for the service that we don't know about, but these are just the obvious few. The project is now 60% in the design phase, which makes it eligible to receive its allotted federal funding. Of course, due to the current administration, federal funding for transit projects and federal funding in general is a little wonky right now, so we'll see how that goes. Due to this federal holdup, the project is now slated for 2032. Anyways, after Aventura Station, we pass under State Road 854 and US Route 1 intersection grade separation. This has now been completed. We passed through Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport. Broward County is planning to put a station here themselves. That's right, they too are planning to build a commuter rail line. This is essentially the phase 2 to the Northeast Corridor project I just talked about. Therefore, the updates for this project is essentially the same as the other one. However, something interesting about this section of the project is the fact that officials acknowledge that they need a new crossing over or under the new river in Fort Lauderdale. This is because the current low-level drawbridge is unable to handle Brightline, the Florida East Coast Railroad, and the new commuter service, as the amount of time the bridge would spend closed would negatively affect vessel traffic. So proposals include either a taller bridge or a tunnel. Brightline's next stop is Boca Raton. This station has one side platform. The original plan was to have two side platforms, but again, due to cutting back for cost, one side platform was chosen. This really doesn't matter that much because Boca Raton has had the lowest ridership out of the 5 stations on the original segment. This is reflected in the fact that most trains actually bypass this station. Now, in Brightline's lease for the station from the city of Boca Raton, Brightline is obligated to operate the same amount of service as seen at the Fort Lauderdale station. However, this pertains to the service hours and not the number of trains that actually stop at the station. This means the station continues to see 18 to 21 trains a day, while the Fort Lauderdale station receives 33 to 38 trains a day. Now, there are plans to make Boca Raton more of an attractive place for riders to get off. The city is planning to redevelop the entire area around the station to make it more of a transit-oriented community, which means more retail, housing, and businesses, but this is still in the planning stages. The city also applied for a $5 million federal grant to build a second platform, but again, right now, good luck with that. Each Brightline train set has 4 venture cars. 3 of them are in smart service, with 1 in premium service. 2 Siemens SCB-40 charger locomotives are on each side. This is because Brightline plans to lengthen their trains as ridership increases. In October 2024, Brightline lengthened their trains from 4 cars to 5. This is because of an additional train car order for 30 Siemens venture cars, in order to lengthen their trains from 4 cars to 7. The additional train cars that were added in October 2024 were part of the smart service, which means an additional 66 seats per train set. Now, this was made possible by a $34 million federal grant. Federal grant, not private money, but federal taxpayer money. Now, I'm not saying that a public transportation service using taxpayer money is a bad thing. I think people who believe that are delusional. But I also believe that taxpayers should be aware of where their money is actually going. So we'll just add that additional $34 million to the existing government funding for this project. That's $845.2 million in funding, plus X, of course, which is the tax from the debt that the government isn't collecting. Anyways, this is the federal grant that I was talking about earlier in the video when I was talking about Tri-Rail. The main objective of this grant was for Brightline to have more capacity for commuters between West Palm Beach and Miami. So the fact that they got this grant makes the future of the Tri-Rail Express service between Miami and West Palm Beach kind of uncertain. The cars are divided into 5 colors: bright red, bright pink, bright orange, bright green, and bright blue. But as of recording this video, any one of these train sets could be covered in ad wraps, such as the Orlando Health wrap or the Kissimmee wrap. And this might be an unpopular opinion, but I actually like the ad wraps because I like to see some variety. But if I was a rider, I would not like the ad wraps because they cover the windows most of the time. I mean, I'm happy Brightline is getting some additional funding from somewhere, but let's try not to cover up the windows so passengers could actually look out of them. Around 80% of the grade crossings on the Florida East Coast Railroad are pretty horrible. On the same day that the Orlando extension opened, Brightline Not Alive is 99th person. That's about 16.5 deaths per year. Now, your standard grade crossing looks a little bit like this. However, a lot of the grade crossings on the Florida East Coast Railroad look like this. As of February 8th, 2025, there have been 127 Brightline-related deaths. which means since the last time I've covered this company, Brightline has continued to be the most deadly railroad per mile in the country. Not injuries, not accidents, but deaths, like people straight up dying.
Para Messi, 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 immens Messi, encara 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 Messi.
41 of those deaths came from 2024 alone. But let's look at the injury numbers. In 2024 alone, 74 people were injured from a Brightline collision. So this is obviously not great. So what's the solution to this? Well, there's a $1 million grant from the federal government for a grade elimination project in Overland Park for Northeast 36th Street, a $4.9 million grant for safety improvements for crossings in Cocoa, Melbourne, and Brevard County. And apparently there's an additional $45 million of grant money for improvements to safety between Miami-Dade and Brevard County that are missed in 2023. And this leaves us with $896.1 million in government funding. The St. Lucie Bridge is just one of the sections of the alignment that is just... This bridge will be replaced by a new double-tracked bridge across the river. The bridge will have an additional 11 feet and 3 inches of clearance over the existing bridge. This means that 92% of marine traffic can pass through when the bridge is closed compared to 22% with the current bridge. With it scheduled to open in 2029, the total cost is set at $218 million. $130.5 million has been awarded to the project from the federal government. Oh, we're clear across $1 billion now. Anyways, the Florida East Coast Railway has secured $25.5 million in funding, which sent Brightline looking for a $45 million federal grant to fill the funding gap. Now, this got denied for obvious reasons. I mean, think about it. The entire bridge would be pretty much fully federally funded, aside from the $25.5 million that came from the Florida East Coast Railway. I mean, Amtrak, a federal company, doesn't even get that type of treatment. During this time, Brightline struggled to pick a final alignment for the Tampa extension. In April 2024, Governor Ron DeSantis denied Brightline a grant for $50 million for the expansion between Orlando and Tampa, saying, and I quote,
"It's privately funded. I mean, we are not going to be on the hook as a state with taxpayers for doing trains."
Doing trains, he's talking about them like they're hard drugs.
"If they proceed, there is a corridor to be able to do that, but it's not going to be Florida taxpayers constructing the train. I can be clear on that."
So I think it's fair to say that this project is pretty much stalled out. But there is some hope. There's also a possibility that the Orlando Airport Station might host Sunrail as well. Though I support the extension, I don't think that Sunrail is going to be a big game changer, especially not for Brightline. Both of them are just not fast enough modes for travel within the state. Now in this case, I was talking about the possibility of passengers using Sunrail to get to Brightline. However, this would be a huge game changer for Brightline to use Sunrail to get to Tampa, as Sunrail could probably reach some more government funding that Brightline can't. Speaking of funding, Universal Orlando put up $2 million towards the study of this project. The Florida Department of Transportation also put in $2 million, with the study slated to end in 2 years. Even though Stuart seemed like they were anti-Brightline with all the lawsuits they were giving them, the point of the lawsuit was to make sure that Brightline was legally obligated to make a stop on the Treasure Coast. The future of the Stuart station is uncertain, simply because the city of Stuart refuses to apply for federal grants. Essentially, they don't want the station to be fully taxpayer funded, which this is federal taxpayer money, so this is like all of our money, but okay. And they want Brightline to pay half of the station costs. And the station is $60 million, so Brightline will be contributing $30 million. But the county is not having that, as they already locked the deal in with Brightline to pay for the full thing. And Martin County said if the city doesn't support them to look for grants, they'll be taking this to court. Yes, the county and the city will be spending local taxpayer money to sue each other about spending federal taxpayer money to build the station.
I have to calm down. I almost hit him.
The next topic I want to talk about, it hasn't been something I've covered in the Explain video. It was something that I almost wanted to cover, but I didn't want to be pessimistic about Brightline, especially about stuff that seems alleged, because, you know, I'm all about sharing the truth about stuff because that's journalism. But back in 2023, when I was researching for the Truth About Brightline series, I went on the Brightline job application Indeed page. When I was on Indeed, I saw several negative reviews left by former and present Brightline employees, specifically points about lack of mental health awareness, and probably the worst one, racism. Now all these complaints specifically came from onboard attendants. So I knew that this whole Brightline employee problem might blow up on Brightline in the future, but I didn't put it in the video because this was all highly alleged. But while researching for this video, I saw an article accusing Brightline of union busting. And that's not good. The long story short is that the onboard attendants tried to form a union with the Transport Workers Union, and then Brightline hired union busting lawyers. The National Mediation Board, NMB, put it up to a vote, and then majority of the onboard attendants voted to join the union. Brightline sued the NMB for overstepping their jurisdiction, but then the NMB's argument is that Brightline has been using too much federal funds to have full control over the elections. And this might spark a federal investigation into Brightline. You can't union bust and use federal taxpayer money. Just know that a lot is going to change for Brightline financially. With that being said, if I earned your like and subscription, I love you. And if you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching. Doors open.